What's up guys, my name is Carl and welcome to Tech Hunter. Today I am finally getting around to checking out the Antec DF700 Flux, which is probably the best Antec case that I've checked out so far. Antec have recently released the DF800 Flux, which you can see on your screen right now, but I'm not too sure how well that one will perform thermally, considering that half of the front panel is completely covered up. Maybe a video for the future where I can compare them both side by side and see what's actually happening there. Looking online right now, the DF700 Flux is available for about 80 to 90 pounds, depending on where you shop. But if you are interested, there's a link in the description down below, so you can go check that price for yourself. So, what is Flux? What does it actually mean? I'll tell you exactly what it means using the words Antec use themselves. Strap in and get ready for some incredible marketing jargon. What is the Flux platform? The definition of Flux is flow luxury. The Flux platform is a new industry-leading and highly efficient design by Antec, featuring an advanced case structure for excellent airflow combined with 5x 120mm fans included. A core element of the design ethos was to enhance GPU cooling performance. Of course, I'm sure that most of you don't give two Flux about naming schemes, and all that you care about is what it's like to build in and how cool it keeps your components. But being a Flux case guarantees that the case will include at least 5 120mm fans, 4 of which are pre-installed, and a bonus one for you to install wherever you want if you desire. Antec recommends installing the extra fan on top of the power supply to provide fresh, cool air to the GPU, of which it will suck in from the PSU chamber below, thanks to a large cutout on the right-hand side panel. The only issue I did have installing the fan was the fact that I could no longer make use of my motherboard's USB 3.0 front panel header, as that plugs into the bottom of the motherboard that I decided to use, and there's no other headers on that motherboard. I did consider moving the fan further back towards the back of the case, but that seems a little bit pointless as it would be directly above the power supply. So if you're wondering how effective that extra fan actually is, you'll have to wait a little bit longer. As I briefly mentioned earlier, there is a USB 3.0 cable for the 2 USB headers on the top of the case by the power button. You also get HD audio jacks, activity LEDs, and an RGB LED cycle button. Throughout the case, there are several large cutouts, the one I just mentioned on the side, the top and the bottom for the power supply, all of which have included dust filters, which are magnetic other than the one for the power supply. All in all, this gives the DF700 support for up to 9 fans in total. You can mount up to 3 140mm fans or 3 120mm fans on the front. On the top, you can mount 2 140mm fans or 3 120s. The rear has support for 120mm fans, and the PSU shroud allows you to mount 2 more 120mm fans on there as well. The case also supports up to 360mm or 280mm radius in the front with a thickness of up to 55mm and support for a 360 or 280 at the top of the case as well. Included inside the DF700 is an addressable RGB LED fan hub, which you can connect to your motherboard for PWM control, and also RGB control through the 3-pin ARGB connector to use with something like Asus Aura Sync, MSI Mystic Light, or Gigabyte Fusion. It's got 5 available headers, so if you wanted to replace the 2 non-RGB fans down the line to match the ones at the front, you can connect them into the hub on the rear to make your life a little bit easier. Both sides of the case are held on with 2 captive thumb screws at the rear, which is a nice clean way to add a tempered glass panel and a really simple way to remove and reattach it. Cable management is okay, if not a little bit subpar. There's just about enough space to attach everything down with either a cable tie or the included Velcro ties. If you weren't using cable extensions like I have here, then you could probably make your life a little bit easier, as they can be a bit bulky, but overall I didn't really have much issue. I didn't spend a lot of time on it, and it looks good enough to me for now. In comparison to other cases at this price point from the likes of NZXT, Phanteks or Lian, the DF700 does look extremely underwhelming in that kind of regard, with no grommets or dedicated cable runs, or even just a bit more depth to the build to make it a bit more future-proof if you do add more storage or more RGB down the line. I didn't use any SATA storage at all, and that saved me from the physical size of the drives as well as the extra cables they require. As far as physical restrictions of the case are concerned, the DF700 can support CPU tower coolers up to 175mm in height, GPUs up to 405mm in length, and PSUs up to 205mm in length. There's support for up to 6 SSDs in total, or 4 SSDs and 2 mechanical drives in the cage below the PSU shroud. Or you can even go for 3 SSDs and 3 hard drives. If you're curious how, this is what Antec would recommend. The rear of the case is 35.5mm deep, where you like to run your cables, and the narrow part behind the motherboard is just 26.5mm. which is just about enough to squeeze my 8-pin CPU connector behind with an extension connected. Now let's take a look at temperatures, and this is where the DF700 Flux performs really well. With a cheap CPU cooler like the PRIZM and a big RTX 2080 GPU, this case did a really good job at keeping temperatures under control. In its current configuration during a full system load with all side panels on, with Cinebench R23 and MSI Combustor on loop as kind of a worst case scenario, I saw the CPU temperatures reach a peak of 87.5 degrees, which isn't bad considering the cooler installed. In the future, I'll probably likely use maybe like a Hyper 212 so we can give us a more realistic temperature of what we can expect with slightly better coolers. But under a general gaming load with Cinebench not running, we peaked at around 69 degrees. Nice. As for the GPU, we hit a max temperature of 63 degrees, which is really good as the Zotac card can get pretty warm. As for that extra fan that Antec includes in the box, does it make a difference? Well, I disconnected the fan afterwards to see what would happen, and under the same tests, the GPU temps did in fact rise from 63 up to 67 degrees. Overall still great and perhaps not needed in this build, but it's good to have the option if your card is starting to run a bit warmer than it used to. And if you're wondering, CPU temps remain more or less the same with the fan disconnected, and also removing the front panel did basically nothing to affect the temperatures of the build either, which is a good sign. Overall, the Antec DP700 Flux is a solid option for a mid-range case. It's a fairly muted design when turned off and can look as bright and as gamery as you want it. It offers enough to make first-time builders feel comfortable, providing you keep your expectations realistic, or you use flat black cables with your power supply to give you that little bit extra room. It also has the ability to keep your gaming PC running fairly cool overall. I would say it's a pretty easy case to recommend. It offers great airflow, fairly quiet fans, though nowhere near silent, nice RGB implementation which is easy to wire and control, and a fairly solid build quality all round. Anyway guys, that brings us to the end of the video. If you liked it, feel free to click that like button down below, and if you decide my face hasn't offended you, don't forget to click that subscribe button and that bell icon so you can check out my next video. Anyway, thanks for watching. Cheers.